The following program is presented by the National Committee on United States-China Relations, www.ncuscr.org.
I have money to put on presentations like this on behalf of the China Leadership Monitor, and we've wanted for some time to do one in New York City. And so the National Committee seemed to be the obvious place to host it, and so I'm grateful for that. I'd like to switch gears and talk about elite politics, in particular in the context of the current economic downturn. And I want to offer a very simple point, and that is simply that in the context of the economic and social stresses that China is facing right now, the leadership, and I mean the top levels of the leadership, have shown impressive discipline and cohesion. This might seem to be a commonsensical point, but I think if you look at it in context and in terms of past experience, it's not so commonsensical, and it says something remarkable about the evolution of elite politics in China over the last 20 to 30 years. Let's see, which direction does this go? It works. So when I talk about the leadership, what I'm really talking about are these 9 people. This is the Politburo Standing Committee elected at the October 2007 17th Party Congress. Now, the people who are framed in red in the bottom row are the people new to the Politburo Standing Committee, the top-rung people, and those are people in rank order, were there since 2002. But the bottom rung, those people were elevated at the last Party Congress. The 2 people on the right had served previously on the Politburo, but the 2 people on the left were helicoptered into the Politburo Standing Committee, and they are the 2 that seem to be the heirs apparent to the positions of Party General Secretary and eventually Premier. At least that appears to be the intention. More broadly, I'm referring to the Party Politburo. This is the rest of the Politburo appointed in 2007. Again, the people framed in red are new to the body as of 2007. Wang Gong, the man in yellow, was promoted from alternate status to full membership in 2007. That's why he's in a different color. Now, in talking about elite-level politics, I'd like to offer a very brief description of how I understand elite politics at this level to work in the contemporary period. This is an approach that I've been arguing for a while. It's not by any means universally accepted. I think Joe and I debate angles of this for some time now. But let me lay it out because I think it's useful in understanding the broader point I'm hoping to try to make. And that is what we've seen over time, and I'll argue since the Deng Xiaoping period, the beginning of the reform years, is an effort to institutionalize collective leadership. This has been manifested in the last 20 years since the 14th Congress in 1992 by a number of steps that try to reinforce this collective decision-making at the very top. This includes, first of all, the observable fact that more and more members of the Politburo are career people in specific fields of expertise, and they are selected for positions into the Politburo on the basis of that representation. The other elements here I'll lay out in a bit more detail. They include, first of all, the explicit effort, deliberate effort to render the General Secretary simply first among equals. He's no longer the paramount leader. And in fact, interestingly, Hu Jintao, since his appointment as General Secretary in November 2002, has never been referred to as the core leader. This is the designation that Deng Xiaoping applied in 1989 to Mao Zedong as the first-generation core leader, to himself as the core leader of the second generation, and to Jiang Zemin as the core leader of the third generation. Strikingly, Hu Jintao has not been called the core leader. And so this represents an effort that was borne out again since the 17th Congress, simply to lower his stature relative to the rest of the collective leadership. He's first among equals. And so what we see, in contrast to the phrase to describe Jiang Zemin's position as the 15th Central Committee Leadership Collective with Comrade Jiang Zemin as the core, what we've seen universally since 2002 is simply Hu Jintao with respect to the 16th Central Committee, now the 17th Central Committee Leadership Collective with Comrade Hu Jintao simply as General Secretary. It's his post. He's simply the first among the broader leadership. And that's complemented by other indications in the media on behalf of collective leadership dynamics. Second or third element here is simply, it's not that, just wanted to say that who's not powerful, it's not that who is not powerful, he is powerful, and I'd argue that he's even stronger thanks to the 17th Congress. Specifically, he's got several of his cronies onto the broader Politburo, people clearly connected with him. The group around Jiang Zemin, the core group, the Shanghai Gang, the Shanghai Bang, has been effectively dissolved. He's got control over the general office. This is the critical communications and infrastructural and logistics office that manages the affairs of the leadership. And he's got stronger control over the appointment process thanks to the appointment of Li Yuanchao, one of his cronies, as the head of the organization department of the party. Nevertheless, many of the new policy departures, the new ideological innovations that have emerged in his tenure are not described as his intellectual property. They are instead advertised simply as reflections of the collective wisdom of the entire Central Committee leadership. And they are referred that way uniformly in the media. You just don't see any of these innovations, the harmonious society idea, the scientific development concept, simply referred to as the product of Hu Jintao's specific ideological genius. And so this is another way to bring the paramount leader down from the high plane that used to be normal in Chinese politics. We've seen an effort to routinize succession. This is an extraordinary thing in the history of communist parties. And Hu Jintao was specifically trained for 10 years to become the general secretary from 1992 down to his succession in 2002, and he moved up into positions to succeed also as president and then head of the military decision-making body, the Central Military Commission, in step with that. So when the transition came, it followed precedents based on Deng Xiaoping's retirement over the 87 to 1990 period, and when Hu Jintao took over from Jiang Zemin as the party secretary. He'd been running the party apparatus for 10 years. When he took over as president in 2003, he'd served as vice president for 5 years. And when he took over the military commissions in 04-05, he served 5 years as vice chairman on those bodies. And so this was a clear effort to prepare for his succession. Intriguingly, it's being followed now, at least as far as we can tell, in the preparation for Xi Jinping to succeed Hu Jintao in the 2012 through 2015 period. And so with his appointment to the Politburo Standing Committee in October 07, he's now the executive secretary of the Secretariat. That means he's running the party apparatus. He was appointed vice president at the NPC session last year, which gives him international visibility by international protocols. And I expect he will be appointed vice chairman of the Central Military Commission at the 4th plenum this fall. We'll see whether that happens, but all of the other stages have already taken place. Finally, we see a curious phenomenon that I call institutional balancing on the representation on the Politburo. If you exclude the 4 pinnacle members, Hu Jintao, Wu Guoguang, who's the head of the NPC, the Prime Minister, Wen Jiabao, and Jia Qinglin, the head of the CPPCC, and account for the other 21 members, it's rather striking, and this isn't a new phenomenon with this Politburo arrangement, that there are 6 members who work in the party apparatus, 6 who work in the state institutions, either the NPC or the state council, 6 members from the regions, and strikingly 2 people from the military and 1 from the security sector. The point here is to prevent any single block of leaders from becoming a power base that the general secretary in particular or any other leader could use to overwhelm the rest of the leadership. And so it's an effort that's borrowed from Soviet precedents, by the way, to try to inhibit that kind of dynamic. Now, this is a different kind of politics than we're used to. The good old days when I got going in this field, you really knew where people stood, and you could analyze leadership politics from all sorts of angles that underscored a rather different dynamic than the one we see today. And so you could tell that Lin Biao, of course, was the closest comrade in arms to Chairman Mao because he held his Little Red Book the highest. You can see the other two, Chen Boda and Jia Qing, have theirs a little lower. Zhou Enlai, the rightist, has got his the lowest. And so Kang Sheng, the security guy, he's over there pretty high too. So this is a very different dynamic, and one could analyze Politburo leaderships in terms of factions that were fairly clear-cut. And the whole point here simply is that the kind of leadership system that we see today is just worlds apart from what we were used to in the Cultural Revolution era. And it means we have a very different kind of leadership politics, and we need to take that into account in the way we analyze it. So essentially, this kind of politics is a politics of oligarchy, and it means that the institutional process is in the hands of a collective leadership that is geared to make rational decision-making on the kinds of issues that a leadership of a country is naturally going to face, and it also means that the processes of politics at that level are interest-driven and are managed within increasingly consolidated institutional patterns. It's not the free-for-all that we saw in the 60s and 70s when Mao was around. Finally, though, politics of oligarchy was deliberately designed by Deng Xiaoping. It was clear in his watershed speech in 1980 on reform of the political system, and I think across the 80s and on into the 90s you could see clear efforts to try to install this kind of leadership because he thought it was appropriate for a couple of very basic reasons. One, to guide China's modernization, the other to prevent the kind of leadership conflicts that emerged in the 60s under Mao. This politics of oligarchy, however, is difficult to maintain, and it has built into it tensions that tend to undermine it. It's potentially unstable. And if you've read Aristotle's Politics, he analyzes four kinds of oligarchy, and he says they're all bad because they're unstable and unpredictable. In particular, the dangers of oligarchy include the basic problem of inhibiting the rise of a strong man who can overwhelm the rest of the leadership. The Soviets saw this in Stalin and worked in the post-53 period to overcome it, and the Chinese saw it in Mao and have sought to prevent it in the post-76 period. But the other danger is simply that there is a tendency to go in the other direction, a centrifugal tendency on the part of leaders who try to advance their cause by reaching out to constituencies outside the leadership group to strengthen their position and achieve a more dominating position in the overall leadership. And this was seen in Soviet politics with Boris Yeltsin, who used the Russian Federation to overwhelm and contribute to the decline of the national system of Soviet politics in the Soviet Union in the late 80s and early 90s. In China, we have also seen this phenomenon, and in the late 80s, and this is the context that I want you to recall. By the late 80s, there were clear divisions in the leadership over policy issues, although the leadership seemed to work in general sense. But in 1988, there was a major debate over economic policy. Deng called for a new wave of wage and price reforms to advance the reforms, but that was resisted ultimately by people who were still strongly wedded to the state-owned enterprise system and therefore resisted it. That meant that in the fall of '88, there was a major battle over economic policy that split the leadership significantly. It resulted in a victory by the conservatives over Deng Xiaoping and Zhao Ziyang, and weakened both heading into the spring of 1989. And so part of the problems in the Tiananmen crisis was simply the failure of the leadership to come to resolution quickly and deal with the problems that emerged in the spring of '89. And so looking now to the current context, this is a context and a past that is, I think, relevant to understanding what's going on in the leadership now. I love this picture. This is the Politburo Standing Committee marching into the National People's Congress. And the more you look at it, the more you recognize. First of all, Hu Jintao is squarely in the middle. He's the number one leader. To the immediate right of him is Wu Guangguo, the number two leader. To the immediate left, the number three leader, Wen Jiabao. The guy on the far right is Cheng Li, the number 4 leader. The number 5 leader is the guy on the far left, and behind it works out in the same way. And so they walk that way to get in there. I always wondered, how do they do this? This is the Politburo Standing Committee precision drill team. And you wonder, how do they work that? You know, they had to disassemble coming through that doorway and then reassemble. And after a new group is appointed, do they all get together and practice? You know, just how does that work? Anyway, when you look at it long enough, you notice that there are three people: Wan Jiabao and Hu Jintao and Cheng Li, all with their left foot forward. Everybody else has their right foot forward. You wonder, what does that mean? You start thinking about that. Notice also they all have red ties, except for Li Changchun on the far left. He has a red tie, but it's striped. He's the only one like that. Why is that? So I spent my younger years looking at Politburo lineups on Tiananmen and looking at the people who wore sunglasses versus those who wore white shirts and versus Mao suits and so forth as an index of who was rising and falling. So anyway. I love this picture for those reasons. But the point is that the leadership has been just rigidly disciplined in addressing the issues of the day. I scoured the statements by leaders at this level at the National People's Congress to the respective delegates, and they're all talking precisely the same line. And so this is an impressive demonstration in the midst of crisis of unity that I think tells us something significant. Also, they have used a campaign to enhance party unity. This is a campaign mandated at the 17th Congress for study of the scientific development concept to enforce party discipline at local levels behind this policy approach. But as the economic crisis emerged in October, the campaign was launched in September. They refocused it to deal with the problems of stability in a context of anticipated economic downturn. And so the party leadership is clearly behind this. It's run by a leading small group in which Xi Jinping, the guy in the center of the picture, is the head of the leading small group. He's assisted by Li Yuanchao, and Hu Jintao makes all the speeches. And so one more time, they're using the party apparatus to complement Joe's reference to a CDIC effort to try to quell and maintain and contain the anticipated stresses in this crisis. Looking ahead, the bottom point again is this public display of cohesion, but there are events coming up that would indicate whether or not things are on track and this unity is being sustained. As I mentioned, we should expect Xi Jinping here talking to Hu Jintao at the People's Congress to be appointed to the Central Military Commission this fall at the 4th plenum. If that comes off, then things are on track. If it doesn't, however, then there's something seriously amiss. And so this is, I think, an impressive demonstration in its context, and especially in light of the past. And I think that's it. Yes. Thank you.